People and things don't upset us. Rather, we upset ourselves by believing they can upset us. Dear listeners, I chanced upon these famous words by Dr. Albert Ellis in 2020 in the midst of a raging pandemic while trying to navigate through personal emotions of anxiety and the overwhelming feeling of not being good enough. It was at this juncture I realized that we speak about managing and leading people without truly understanding our own sense of self. Why do we act against our best interest? How does our thinking patterns affect our relationships and our reality? I turned to psychology and rational emotive behavioral therapy, RBT to be precise, to understand more and knocked on doors of my guest today, Dr. Debbie. Dr. Debbie is a distinguished psychologist and mental health counselor, renowned for expertise in rational emotive behavioral therapy, REBT. Born and raised in Melbourne, Australia, she is a licensed psychologist and a licensed mental health counselor in New York. She serves as an adjunct professor at Columbia University's Teachers College in New York City, where she teaches courses on REBT and comparative psychotherapies. We speak a lot on what REBT is, how it can be a powerful way of life, and how its principles are more relevant today than ever before. Stay tuned for more. Dr. Debbie, it is an honor and privilege to have you here today. You are a renowned psychologist, a mental health counselor, and of course, you are the partner of the late Dr. Albert Ellis, who is a pioneer, was a pioneer, and continues to touch uh, everyone in the world today with the principles of rational emotive behavioral therapy. You and Dr. Albert Ellis brought this to the world, this amazing gift of rational emotive behavioral therapy. I met you way back in 2022 when I first heard about it in a workshop. And from then on, I was hooked on to REBT. And I felt that there is no one better to go ahead and speak about it than you, Dr. Debbie. So thanks so much for saying yes to this, doctor.
Thank you, Priyanshu, for inviting me. It is truly, sincerely a great pleasure, a really great pleasure. And I love your enthusiasm and embrace of the approach. From our conversation earlier, you have a deep understanding of its value to individuals of every culture and walk of life. And in this life with a lot of strange things happening in our world and in our personal lives, it's sad, in my observation, how many people have not been taught one way or another, just attitudes, tools, techniques for keeping stable in unsettled times. And it's my joy, as you know, to share the principles around the world and wherever I can. And so, again, my pleasure to be with you and with your viewers and listeners. And thank you for your invite.
All right, Dr. Debbie. So, my first question, very curious, Dr. Debbie, if you have to go ahead and explain to everyone who's listening today, what is rational emotive behavioral therapy? What is it?
Well, if you're a psychotherapist or a psychologist, you would know it as an effective, scientific, evidence based, philosophical, compassionate, therapeutic approach. And in fact, rational emotive behavior therapy, and I'll call it REBT from now on, heralded in the cognitive revolution in psychotherapy. Before my husband created it, the psychoanalytic work and approach of Sigmund Freud ruled the roost. And certainly for many people, it offered some insight and understanding over time. But for the majority of people, who were patients. It was a lengthy process, it was an expensive process, and it wasn't, in my late husband's opinion, getting to the root cause of emotional disturbance. So I won't give a whole long history now, other than to say he created this approach that is holistic, attends to the heart, emotions, mind, cognition, and our actions and behavior beautifully and pragmatically. Um, a brilliant, effective psychotherapeutic approach for simple neuroses and more complex psychoses. But in addition to that preamble, it's a way of life. It's a way of life. One doesn't have to have therapy to benefit from it. There are a number of books out there, scores of which my late husband wrote, a few that he and I co-wrote, plus I've written chapters and articles, and on my website are some of those. So it's a way of life, reminding people of the power each one of us has to create our emotions and attitudes, no matter what the circumstances, that it's not what happens in life, but what we tell ourselves about it that creates our emotional destiny. And whether in business, in the workplace, in the family home, in the wilderness, if our goal in this one life that we have, and even people who believe in reincarnation agree that in all probability, though it may change with scientific development, but in all probability, the body we're in right now, it probably goes at some point. And so in this finite time we have, what a tragedy, frankly, to allow ourselves to unnecessarily suffer emotionally, mentally, and it affects our health, when by simply adjusting our thinking over time, ongoing effort, we minimize stress and suffering and we maximize joy. Why not?
Wow, wow, wow. Dr. Debbie, you touched upon two magical words, and yet those are words that I think haunts all of us today, which is stress and suffering. I think everyone latches onto stress and suffering and wants a way out of it. So, in your experience over several decades of doing this, Dr. Debbie, of practicing REBT, how do you or how have you seen REBT help let go of stress and suffering? It's a common thing across the world. It happens more often in the world of business and management with multiple priorities. We have seen more cases of, let's say, burnt out and depression
Mm.
and suicides, especially in the healthcare sector. So, of nurses and and doctors and caregivers and care providers. How does REBT help really at a fundamental level to elevate stress or suffering?
Both as a cure and hopefully by applying the principles and tools and techniques as a prevention. You know, with suicide, prevention is the cure. And if more people, like more of us from childhood on, were taught the principles that prevent stress and that keep us stable. You know, the goal isn't happy, happy, happy all the time when some bad things happen in life, as the Buddhists and many other spiritual approaches and even secular approaches remind us. Life will in all likelihood contain loss and suffering. We're biological creatures in a natural world. It's not just humans. What doesn't change? What doesn't age? What doesn't end
Wow.
in our world? Um, so what REBT offers um, is education. And the reminder that unless we're cognitively impaired in some way or literally so ill in pain 24/7 that it's difficult to think clearly. But with those exceptions, if one chooses, and it's a choice, one can develop habits of healthy thinking. And healthy thinking creates healthy emotions. And healthy thinking and emotions contribute to healthy choices of actions and behavior. You know, REBT reminds us that our thinking and our feelings and our behavior are all inseparably intertwined. But if you were to ask me, well, what comes first, even though each one equally influences the other, but if we're looking for chicken or egg, what started it? The thinking. I would say the thinking. And so one of the many empowering, life-enhancing offerings of REBT is that it educates us about the difference between healthy and unhealthy negative emotions. Now, when I say negative in this context, it doesn't mean bad. It means not pleasant. It can be uncomfortable. It can be very painful. But there's healthy painful and unhealthy painful. And shall I quickly give the difference here?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah. And so stress, when I think of the word stress, it's both a biological reaction response infused with unhealthy anxiety. And it very much affects the longevity of a human person's life. A human person. Yeah, most persons are human. Some of us may act inhumanely, but that's a whole other podcast, isn't it? So when we think in rational ways, healthy ways, when bad things happen in the workplace, we're being pressured, there are deadlines, we have a very nasty supervisor, or we're supervising people who just not efficient or not reliable, whatever the stressors are. When we think in healthy, rational ways, and I can outline what rational versus irrational is in a few moments if you would like. But with the emotions, so the unhealthy, debilitating ones, and I invite so strongly your listeners or viewers, if you want to make the most out of listening to this, think, if you will, of how it applies to you. Do you ever feel any of these unhealthy or healthy emotions? Do they help you or hurt you? And then in a little bit, when I talk about irrational thinking versus healthy rational, how often do you think in irrational ways, listeners and viewers, and Priyanshu? But you already heard this, so I'm speaking. We're sharing with your listeners and viewers. Those irrational ways of thinking, are they helping? Are they really helping your life or hurting it? And REBT proposes and asserts very definitely that it hurts. It's self-sabotaging. It leads to procrastination and other unhelpful ways of being when we think irrationally. So the unhealthy negative emotions that we create, remember, first principle of REBT, it's not what happens. It's not your stinking boss or your unreliable workers that creates your stress. No. It's the way we think about them. Now, accepting what we don't like doesn't mean that we don't do anything to change it if we can. Okay, just want to say that. Anyway, unhealthy negative emotions include anxiety, stress, panic, fear, hopelessness, despondency, depression, rage, guilt, and shame. You know, I would ask your viewers and listeners who listen to my language, who create those emotions. And I'm not pointing a finger or casting any blame until we're taught how not to. It's obvious that's unfortunately what we tend to do. But with awareness, we can change it. Hence the gift of your podcasts, Priyanshu, and other material like that teach people the how-tos of healthy change. So there are many articles in the Journal of the American Medical Association, other scientific publications that demonstrate clearly the impact of harboring those emotions on the health of the body. And one, I'll give it an example. I could give many if we had a ton of time, but just one, which is, I think, enough for now. I'll give two.
All right.
So the impact of extreme ongoing anger, not the occasional outburst, not light annoyance, but that kind of deep-seated on the cardiovascular system has been shown to be incredibly significant, leading to worsening of cardiovascular symptoms, high blood pressure, thickening of the arteries, and the weakening of the immune system, which leads in many cases to the manifestation of dormant conditions, health conditions that we may have been predisposed to, but if we maintain stable emotions and other healthy living practices, probably would not develop. And another article that a friend of mine, who's a noted cardiologist here in New York, showed me, Journal of the American Medical Association, a long-term study on the impact of daily gratitude, which is one of the things the REBT prescribes. Long-term study, many people, same cardiovascular issues and problems. And 50% were asked to practice daily gratitude and 50% were not. Incredibly, those who practiced the daily gratitude on average lived 15 years longer than those who didn't.
Wow.
So the mind-body connection. Anyway, back to the emotions. When we think in irrational ways, I just described the unhealthy negative emotions here. When we think in healthy, rational ways about the same unpleasant or brutal situation, instead of anxiety, panic, fear, stress, we create what REBT calls healthy concern. Concern is motivating. I have a deadline. I'd better But that doesn't have the same impact on our blood pressure, on our heart rate, on our experience of life. It motivates us. When we think in rational ways instead of hopelessness, depression, and despondency, we experience healthy sadness, disappointment, and grief. Your sadness and disappointment can be motivating. Oh, how can I learn from this? Could I have done it differently? And how might I try to do it better next time? And grief can be exceedingly painful. Losing people we love or pets, or a chapter in our life is over and we didn't want it to be over, but we don't have any choice for whatever reason. It's painful. And that's part of the tapestry of life. And so in the early stages, however long or short that is, for every individual it's different, it can feel very much like depression. But as the weeks and months go on, one can feel that grief, and there's a vacuum, there's a pain, but one can also smile at a beautiful sunrise and feel joy in seeing something uplifting in life. Both and can experience joy and the sadness and grief. Depression, usually there's an absence of joy and motivation to live a meaningful life. So grief is like the other side of love, and the realization, for the rest of my life, I am deprived of this or them. but I can stand it. And one day my life too is probably going to come to an end. So let me accept and cherish and be grateful and refuse to stay stuck in any debilitating extreme depression. So, then a few more things. When we think in healthy ways instead of rage, we create what REBT called healthy anger, connected to our moral compass. When we see or experience immoral, brutal, unethical behavior or situations, it's that no, but we're healthily angry when we don't react. We think things through. We evaluate what might the best choice here be, and let our healthy anger fuel actions to, in our world or the bigger world, make improvements. And finally, when we think in rational ways, instead of guilt and shame, which, along with hopelessness, are frequently there when people attempt suicide, instead of those emotions, we create regret, another emotion connected to our moral compass, where we're willing to take responsibility for any neglect we practiced, anything we may have done that was foolish or wrong or bad. Remembering we're fallible humans, where there's life and the desire, there is hope to make healthy change. And again, regret allows us to think, what can I make amends? What can I learn from this? How can I not repeat this? And so is incredibly valuable. Whereas guilt and shame, underlying those attitudes is, I'm a worthless, hopeless wretch, and worse. And according to REBT, that's not true. One of the many humanistic principles in REBT is that every human being has worth simply because we exist. Now, we may do good things. It doesn't mean we're a good person. Semantically, to say, I am a good person means I only ever do good things. And do I? And similarly, to say someone is an evil or bad person semantically indicates they only ever do evil or bad things. And that's unlikely to be the case. And so accepting unconditionally ourselves and others with any bad behavior doesn't mean we accept the bad behavior. And REBT is all for seeking consequences for someone who does evil. But let us do it from a place of stability, not hate, revenge, rage. And one of the things my husband used to say was, hanging on to rage and bitterness is like eating poison and waiting for the other person to die. No, it'll kill you before it kills them. So regret is another adult emotion where, yeah, I take responsibility. I'm a fallible human. I still have worth. I made really bad choices. What can I learn? May I intend to not repeat them. And on we go. And the more we unconditionally accept ourselves with our fallibility, the more we're able to do it, though it's often not easy, but so it's not easy. It's still doable if we're motivated. Helps us unconditionally accept others in this crazy world. And if we're coming back to the workplace, it's likely there may be difficult or people who act in difficult ways. So the more we work on unconditionally accepting ourselves, the more easily we'll unconditionally accept them as humans of worth, though we may not like their behavior, and we'll be probably more effective in finding ways to deal with their behavior that we don't like than if we were enraged. So I hope I've made clear enough the difference between the healthy and the unhealthy emotions, and my apologies if that was a little lengthy.
Dr. Devi, I think that was incredibly helpful and also very thought provoking, which leads me to this next piece, Dr. Devi, on we human beings are designed to be resilient. We are designed to, let's say, do everything that's in our power to further the race, to think about ourselves, to think about self-preservation, generally. Then where does all this unhealthy thinking pattern come from? Why do we, if you use the word create, why do we create them in the first place? So why do we have all of this in the first place? And then why do we hold on to them also at the same time?
Great question again. Um, so, REBT reminds us that each human, and we're talking about humans that aren't severely cognitively
Yeah.
impaired, yeah, are born with a capability to think in both rational ways and irrational ways. And how is it that many of us can tend to irrational? Because that's what we're taught
Mm,
implicitly as little impressionable young infants and children. We listen and we look at how adults
mm,
think and what they say and what our culture says and what they teach us in school and through the media. And if a person goes to a religious group, what the tenets there are. And so we're like, our brains are sponges, we take it in. And when we're very, very young, the brain isn't developed enough yet to discern, well, is mummy or daddy, are they really right about this? I think they're irrational. It's like they are literally the source of maintaining our lives, and we take it in and don't think things through. And then we continue to develop. Now, some of us might be lucky enough to have a mentor or an inspiring person, or we read a book that wakes us up. Wait a minute. All my life, I'm telling myself I shouldn't or they shouldn't, but
mm,
I can think about this differently. And so we wake up and we notice the positive impact, how life enhancing, how it enhances the achievement of our goals, how it reduces and prevents stress. Wow. But a huge number of people don't don't have that wake up call, or some until they're rock bottom and the choice is all the way down, or some sort of aha moment to rejoin life again. So unfortunately, as impressionable beings who have the ability to think in both ways, until we're taught them, whether it's by others or we teach ourselves through
mm,
books or other people, that's what's going to happen. And people who are indoctrinated with rigid beliefs damning others who are different from them. I mean, what else is at the heart of terrorism and war? You
mm,
shouldn't be the way you are. You should be the way I say you are. You shouldn't exist
mm,
because you believe. I mean, it comes from the thinking. So we're born and reared to be either irrational or rational. The good news is if we tend to be reared with a predominance of irrational thinking, if we're lucky enough to wake up
mm,
um, through our own initiation or the inspiration of others, can change our lives. But it takes more than a wake up. We
mm,
wake up and then maintenance through the rest of our life. It's not difficult. It's just
mm,
continuing to perpetuate healthy thinking, to be mindful, to get into the habit of thinking about our thinking, catching when we're thinking in ways that hurt us, disputing them,
mm,
replacing them, and then repetition, repetition. It's like brushing teeth. It's not difficult to do it every day, but if we don't, probably most of us, our teeth and gums will suffer. So we just do it. And we can get into that habit of checking in. What are my listeners and viewers? What are you feeling right now? What emotion? What are you feeling in your body? Where are you feeling that emotion in your body? And what are you thinking? Is that hard? Is it hard to tune in? How many of us tend to give more attention to the well-being of our partners or our family members or our friends or our pets
Mm,
than to ourselves. How often do we check in on ourselves? I would say for many people, not enough,
mhm,
habitually.
mm,
And we neglect ourselves. And who is more responsible except when we're dependent young infants and children and babies? But when we become self sufficient, who is more responsible for our well being than us? So
powerful.
we learn to think the way we think, and through choice, we can change unhealthy thinking.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so Dr. Debbie, work with me on this. So let's say if someone has a particular belief, how does that belief help him or hurt him? Like, how do you even dispute that? For example, if someone says that I should have got that promotion, I was the most deserving person, it should have come to me. So we hear a lot of should, and there's an expectation. And of course, with that, a lot of emotions attached to that. How do we work with that?
Great question. So it's very healthy to think, I wish I had gotten that job. I believe I did deserve it. I worked very hard. Um, and the result of wishing I had gotten something good that I didn't get is healthy sadness and disappointment. And what does that lead to? Thinking maybe deeper, is there anything else I might have done? And sometimes the answer is yes. And
Mm,
sometimes the answer is not really. Sometimes we don't get a job because the relative of the person of the boss got the job. One of the realities, life isn't always fair. And
mm,
so with healthy thinking, I wish, sad disappointment, a little self-reflection, and if, in all honesty, the answer is no, I really think the best I humanly could at that time, then acceptance. We don't always get what we want, and forward. Now what? What's my next step? What might I learn from this? And a little self nurturing. When bad things happen out of our control, let's be kind to ourselves. Yeah. Um, Now, when we should on ourselves, I should have gotten it. It's not fair. Anger, rage. Oh, does that help communication and relationships in the workplace? I don't think so. Hopelessness, maybe depression. So the shoulding creates the unhealthy negative emotions. And the I wish I want, even when we want it passionately. REBT, isn't it about, come from some very robotic neutral zone? No, let's feel passionately, but healthy emotions that only we create, and the unhealthy ones only we create. Would
mm.
it be helpful to just quickly describe the difference between the unhealthy,
Yes.
irrational way of thinking now,
Yes,
Priyanshu?
in
Or
statements,
pardon?
and probably examples of statements like this.
Yeah, sure, sure. So when we think in irrational ways, we suffer. And the elements of irrational thinking are, first of all, as Priyanshu already introduced us to contemplate, the shoulds. When we think in rigid, demanding ways, shoulds, musts, oughts, we create one of the, or many of the unhealthy negative emotions. And there are a few very common ones. And listeners and viewers, I am inviting you not to waste your precious time. I am inviting you to be honest with yourself and consider whether you ever think in any of these ways and whether it helps you or whether it hurts you. I assert in all probability it hurts you, or that it doesn't help you. The first one to consider, whether you think a lot or sometimes, is I. So you would think for yourself, I should be loved and approved of by everyone. Lots of luck with that. And yet people, and let's talk about the workplace, people who suffer a lot there, if someone looks at them in a disapproving way or says something negative, they allow themselves to be devastated because they think everyone should approve of them and like them or love them. And that simply is not realistic in our world for, I would say, most people most of the time. I don't want to overgeneralize, but and a second very common belief that creates suffering is you. You can be an individual, can be the boss, can be a co-worker, can be your partner in life or a friend or a relative. You can be a group, a family, a political group, a culture, a country, a religion, whatever. So you, singular or plural, must believe what I believe. You must act the way I think you should act. You must believe what I believe. A third one, irrational belief that's very common that causes harm, is the world should be fair and with justice. It's highly desirable. It's healthy to want it, and more than just to want it, to perform action that contribute that, like protect environment issues, do something, not just wish it or talk about it. But saying the world should be just and fair when it's not right now leads to rage or hopelessness or anxiety, etc. Another very common irrational way of thinking is the need for certainty. I must know what's going to happen. I must know what to do to get the job. I must know why I got fired. And the demands, again, preferences are fine, lead to healthy emotions, even if they're not pleasant emotions, like, great disappointment. But that's healthy. It's motivating, as I said. Yeah. So the need for certainty, how futile. Right now, I think the only thing that's quite certain is probably this physical body will die one day. And I say probably because we don't know where science is going. I mean, really. But right now, probably, maybe. Anyway, the point is the need for certainty during the COVID time where we were isolating ourselves. I must know when this will be over. I can't stand it. Anxiety, stress. We had a choice, those of us who knew we did. I'm happy to say I and a good number of people I knew, though not everyone I knew, did not feel anxious during the early stages of COVID where really very little was known. I must know, is it safe to be vaccinated? REBT encourages the attitude of be watchful, be mindful, change what you can, accept what you can't, and watch out for negative forecasting. So during the COVID period, when many people made themselves so anxious, there was, but what's going to be? And if we were willing to, well, I'm still alive, let me gather helpful information. Yeah, I can't see in person my neighbor, but lucky I can still maybe talk to them and see them on my device. I can still look out the window and see a beautiful sky. I can walk, and focus on what still is good when things are uncertain is a road to health during times of challenge. So, and another common irrational, unhealthy way of thinking is the need for perfection, which to dream the impossible dream. Now, REBT encourages strive for excellence, which is very different from perfection, which I think, unless we get to heaven, but I haven't been there yet, so I can't tell you for sure. Is perfection realistic? Excellence, I think, yes. But perfection seems to be a sort of a particular standard beyond which you can't even get better, really. So that creates a lot of suffering. So to continue with additional elements of irrational thinking that hurt us, taking things too seriously, blowing things out of perspective, lacking a sense of humor, damning others and ourselves and life when things don't go the way we tell ourselves they should, catastrophizing, awfulizing, convincing ourselves it's the worst it could be, when really it could be extremely bad. But if we're alive and able to think and not debilitated with pain 24/7, it's not the worst it could be. And with life, there is realistic hope it can get better, not
Mm,
if you're dead. And so, absolutistic thinking, overgeneralizing, and damning ourselves, others, and life. Did I already say that when things don't go the way we want them to? When we think in rational ways, we prefer instead of demand. We, going back to irrational thinking, I forgot to say low frustration tolerance.
yeah.
We convince ourselves, I must have what I want when I want it, little baby that I am. Leads to rage and so on. Rational thinking. We have preferences, wants, wishes, desires, but not demands. We have high frustration tolerance. I love the mantra. I can stand what I don't like. I just don't like it. Hey, managers at work or people who work with other humans and not in a solitary way. That's a helpful mantra. I can stand when they do this or that. I just don't like it.
Mm,
Next question, can I do anything about it? If I can, do it. If not, let me accept what I can't change. It's not the worst thing in my life.
mm,
When we think in rational ways, we have humor, we keep things in perspective, we don't catastrophize or awfulize or absolutistic thinking or and one of the most, I think, valuable contributions of REBT. It reminds us, and this is under the category of rational thinking, of the importance of working on creating and maintaining unconditional self acceptance.
mm,
I may not always act well, but I have worth because I exist. I may sometimes do magnificently,
mm,
but that doesn't make me more worthwhile. I have worth because I'm here, a part of this natural world.
mm,
I exist. Unconditional other acceptance doesn't mean I accept any evil behavior and I will seek consequences, but I accept that you, like me, have
mm,
worth. A
mm,
fallible human. Some people say, how can you expect me to unconditionally accept someone who murders, who does evil, who rapes? Huh?
mm,
And what the REBT answer is, it's not about accepting that behavior. But
mm,
if you want to live and with a healthy inner climate,
mm,
to be mentally, emotionally healthy and stable, then I invite you, the person who might ask that question, to consider that evildoer once was a baby like you, once was an innocent baby like you, a blank slate in some ways, but with
mm,
their own genetic makeup. And isn't it likely that if any one of us had their genetic makeup, their upbringing, were
mm,
indoctrinated to believe what they were believing, went through their puberty, adolescence, maybe they were bullied, and to compensate, they became bullied. If any one of us
mm,
were thinking what they were thinking when they did the evil act and had their brain chemistry, isn't it likely we would do the same thing? It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it's a realistic acceptance of the imperfection of human life and existence.
mm,
And, tsunamis,
mm,
very destructive, powerful and magnificent. Can we stop them? No, they exist. Part of being alive in this natural world. And finally, REBT, rational thinking, prescribes the willingness to have unconditional life acceptance. That even though this brutality may happen and this situation happens in this part
mm,
of the world, and there's still beautiful things in life. Unconditional. Let me accept the reality, not
mm.
hide my head in the sand, but not neglect to focus on what is good. And as I said earlier, daily gratitude is a very important part of healthy living, and REBT prescribes it.
Wow,
Did
wow.
I answer your question?
Yes, 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 you did, you did. In fact, I was about to ask you another on the same piece because you spoke about unconditional acceptance. uh, when more often than not, let's say someone confronts with questions like, or thoughts like, I'm not good enough, I would never be good enough,
Ah,
how does one come to uh, accept when one starts pitting himself or herself that that
I
person would never be good enough?
thank you, thank you. I didn't fully answer your question. I got caught up in my description of healthy and unhealthy thinking. So what one does, thank you for that really valuable question. First step, the desire not to suffer emotional disturbance. Second step, the realization that it's our thinking that creates it. Next step, identify the irrational beliefs that are creating the emotional disturbance and the unhelpful behaviors that result. Procrastination, overeating, to drinking too much, whatever. And many unhealthy behaviors come because of unhealthy emotions and the neglect of thinking things through. So we identify the irrational beliefs by looking for the shoulds, the musts, catastrophizing, awfulizing, overgeneralizing, damnation, no humor, taking things too seriously, and write down as many of those irrational beliefs as one can identify. Look for the shoulds, ma. I can't stand it when he blah blah blah. I shouldn't have, la la la. You'll never, I'll never. And write them down. I'm hopeless, I'm worthless. He's a tyrant, I can't stand him, he'll never. Write them down. And then the next step, which is really answering your question, this one and the one just before, we dispute. We dispute by questioning each irrational belief. Where is the evidence that I can't stand it? Where is the evidence just because I don't like it, he shouldn't? Where is the evidence I'm terrible if I make a mistake? And so we question, where is the evidence? Then another question, is it helping me or hurting me to think this way? Usually hurting me. Can I really not stand it? Does it follow just because I want something that I must always have it, and that if I don't, it's awful? So by questioning in this way, the answer is usually very rational. I don't like it, but I can stand it. It's very unfortunate, but that's a part of life. This too will pass. We can come up with some affirming statements. And once we do so, we repeat them, repeat them, repeat them. Neuroplasticity has demonstrated, it's a biological fact, that through repetition, new neural pathways are formed, and through repetition, they're strengthened. And through repetition and focus on them, the previous unhealthy, let's say, thought patterns, through not using them, they atrophy. And so through constant disputing of the irrational beliefs we've identified, and then very importantly, the constant repetition for at least 30 days or more of the effective new rational beliefs. Put them on your phone, put them on your door, just reminder, reminder, reminder. Then over time, the healthy ways of thinking, which lead to healthy emotions, become habitual. But it takes ongoing effort. It definitely does. And so in REBT, it's called the ABCDE framework. A, adversity. What happened that seems to create the unhealthy emotion? Seems. It didn't. The beliefs did. And then we identify the consequence. So what's the emotion that you want to change? Now, if it's sadness and disappointment, say someone spoke badly to you or you lost the job, that's healthy. And so at that point, we don't have to do the whole A, B, C, D, E. Let's think about solutions, if ever, if any. Let's self nurture. Let's be kind to ourselves and accept it and think, what's my next step in my life? So, but if it's one of the unhealthy consequences, depression, hopelessness, rage, anxiety, stressful anxiety, guilt, shame, then we continue. Then we go to the B. I know ACB, even it's called the ABC, but we identify not all beliefs, just the irrational beliefs. Shoulds, must, oughts, like I said. Then the D, disputing, right? Where is it written? Where is the evidence? Can I really not stand it as helping or hurting me? Which leads to E, effective new beliefs. Write them down, repeat, 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 repeat. Elective, selective, healthy brainwashing. And on my website, www.debbiejoffellis1word.com, there's a tab, no charge, and it's called the self-care sheet that outlines the ABCDE that I just described to you.
Wow, beautiful, Dr. Debbie. At one go itself, you walked us through the entire model and how does even one go ahead and dispute his or her irrational beliefs. Uh, Dr. Debbie, we've often seen syndromes like imposter syndromes, where someone goes ahead and they are the top position in leadership, especially in women in leadership roles. More often than not, because they are minority, they're often made to feel that they don't belong in the boardroom or they don't belong where they are. And it's often that the research says that they have to imbibe more of practices by men to go ahead and lead those conversations rather than truly become or bring out the best in themselves. So they often feel like they're imposters, they don't belong there. And whatever they do, it kind of accentuates those kind of emotions or belief. I'm sure that some of these things would definitely help. But for someone who's listening and who really wants to get over this emotion of I am not enough, or I have seen myself fail a lot recently, how does one quickly dispute that belief?
So, great question yet again. Gosh, a lot of humans are talented at self-torture.
Wow.
If if you saw someone, and unfortunately, in some institutions you'll see this, or homes, if you saw a person punching themselves in the head, they would be hospitalized, right?
Yes.
And given, and yet we punch ourselves in our heart and in our gut when we indoctrinate ourselves with the lie that we are not enough. Now, I don't have enough skill to be a classical ballet dancer today, but I am enough of a worthy human being that exists. And so the feeling that I am an imposter, frankly, let's get real. Yes, others may talk, or you're not enough, or well, look at them, and that's how you should be, or they don't even say that's how you should be, but that's what you think they're telling you. But really, it's not what anyone says, it's what we tell ourselves. So anyone who wants to not suffer from the imposter syndrome, here's the good news: you don't need to pay for therapy. Because only you can change your thinking. So think things through. Reality, I may not yet be as good, number one, as I aspire to be. I may not ever be as good as that guy over there, but I'm in this situation and I can strive to do the best I can. And if my standard is not what I wish it would be, it doesn't mean I'm an imposter. It means I'm a human with certain capabilities, with the ability to strive to improve them and frankly, to enjoy the journey without putting myself down as an imposter. So the imposter syndrome, I invite a person who would say, I suffer from it. Here's the good news. You're torturing yourself. Why is that good? Because if you're doing it, you can stop doing it. And no one can make you but you. And you can lessen it. And you can remind yourself, I have worth because I exist. I and every human has limitations in certain abilities. And in some we can excel, and in some we don't, and in some we're average. And sometimes it's okay to be average and to strive to do better if we can. Now, there's an expression, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
That is not the imposter syndrome. That's me saying, I aspire to be a certain way. Let me act as if I am, and maybe in so doing, I'll develop more confidence and ability to be more like that, which is different from I'm faking this and it proves I'm not enough. Everyone is enough unless we tell ourselves we're not. It doesn't mean we can be perfect at every behavioral skill. Come on, and do we want to be? So really, what I would say about the imposter syndrome, there's a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, a wise former, because she's dead, but the wife of President Roosevelt. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And so I urge people who are suffering from that to take responsibility for making your life more enjoyable by stopping the self-torture. Let me do the best I can to excel, yes. Let me accept it when I have limitations in this or that department. It doesn't make me less of a person.
Oh, beautiful, Dr. Devi. I think as we come to the end, there's so many things that I take away today, Dr. Devi, and some of them are from previous lessons as well, which I am so privileged to learn today. For instance, we have worth because we exist, simply because we exist. Second is that we can stand everything, even if we may not like it, but we have the capability to stand something.
Unless it kills us.
Unless it kills us. I was
Then
like,
it's
then you can't stand
then it
it.
doesn't bother us.
Yeah. And I think the third one is we have to accept the things that we can control and even the things that we cannot control yet. I think some of those pieces are beautiful principles of REBT. It has helped me to be more empathetic towards others, towards myself, and more importantly, towards the world. It has helped, I'm sure, countless people through yours and Dr. Albert Ellis' teachings to have healthy patterns and healthy belief systems to navigate through a world of uncertainty, just by understanding and believing that we are all fallible human beings, and hence we have to accept the world for what it is, which is equally fallible. Dr. Debbie, any parting words for our viewers and listeners today?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Priyanshu, for your wonderful questions and your presence. And I think innately empathy is just part of your biological makeup. And thank you, viewers and listeners from listening and viewing. I do hope there's been things that you can incorporate and apply to make your lives um, happier, to minimize suffering and maximize joy in this finite life that we have. I guess I want to encourage people to, if you're not already doing this, make mindfulness a daily practice. What does that mean? regularly tune in to, I mentioned this earlier, what am I thinking now? What am I feeling? How am I behaving? And is this serving me? Is it good and healthy? Or am I self torturing? So, if someone said, well, how do I do that? It's a habit. What I recommend for at least 30 days, set your alarm a few times during the day that won't interrupt work or something important. And when that particular distinct sound, different from your other alarm, goes off, that's the cue. Like Pavlov's dog, hear the bell and they salivate. I don't want you to salivate. Well, you can if you want. But you hear that, and the question, what am I feeling now emotionally in my body? Where am I holding that emotion in my body? And you can relax it, be aware, And then what am I telling myself to create the emotion? If it's not one of the healthy ones, if it's healthy, enjoy it or experience it. Let's not neglect ourselves. Remember what I said earlier, if you would. No one, once we are out of childhood, and certainly in adulthood, if we're not incapacitated in any significant ways, no one's responsible for our mental and emotional and physical well-being more than ourselves. And so let's empower ourselves by crafting a life that where we check in, where we take care of ourselves, where we cherish the gift of being alive. And from that, we're better able to help others. REBT isn't all about me, how can I enjoy life more? It's that. But to truly a life of great meaning helps others, other people, animals, the environment, this natural world, as much as we can as an individual humanly do. And so when we work on, that's not an idea of perfection or enlightenment, but when we constantly work on making life enhancing choices, through our example, we can help other people. We're calm in a crazy environment. Oh, a fellow worker might say, look at them, they're not freaking out. They might come talk to us. How are you so calm right now? And so by example, by modeling or by speaking, by caring, by actions, we can help others. And finally, in addition to urging people to take care of themselves, take care and help other people and the environment and the world, practice daily gratitude. There's so much we can be grateful for. I, like probably many, if not all, of the people listening or viewing, have gone through some really challenging times and really painful times. And one of the things that helped me cope best was not denying what was very, very bad, doing what I could about it. Sometimes I couldn't, so accepting in life. But what really helped was the practice of focusing on, despite and including this, there still is this, there still is good. When my late husband, I'm pointing to his pictures on this book, in his final months of his body was a physical torture chamber and other things were happening that were incredibly painful and brutal. And we didn't succumb to hopelessness because we accepted those very negative things, did what we could. Some things we couldn't do anything about, like his health. We tried. But every day focusing on what still was good, which was, in that case, the love that we felt for one another. He was bedridden. I was able to still look out the window and appreciate the birds and the sky, and just remembering every day to focus on what still is good is a great habit. So, long final words, I suppose, but thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you, Priyanka Shud, for inviting me, and let's maximize joy and minimize pain and help others.
Thank you, Dr. Debbie. In fact, I am today incredibly grateful for being able to have this conversation with you, Dr. Devi, and for this opportunity in a lifetime to meet you and learn from you. Thank you,
Oh,
Dr. Devi. It's been a privilege.
it's my pleasure. And actually, I know you're living in Dubai, and so uh, maybe one day I'll be there and present and can meet some of your listeners and attendees in person. Although I suspect you have viewers and listeners in other countries. So anyway, thank you. It's been my pleasure and privilege to be with you.
Thank you.